Okay, be honest. Have you ever spent an entire day just staring at your textbooks only to feel like you've learned absolutely nothing? It is one of the most frustrating feelings, right? You put in all those hours, but the results, they just aren't there. Well, what if I told you the problem isn't your brain, but your method? Today, we are breaking down the science-backed cheat sheet to learning faster and remembering more, so you can stop wasting your time and finally start seeing some real results.
Just look at the difference here. It is just stark. You could spend 4 long hours passively rereading your notes and maybe retain about 10% of it. Or you could spend 1 hour to 60 minutes in focused, deep work and remember 90%. Now, this isn't magic, it's neuroscience. And that massive gap between effort and results, that's what we are going to unlock today. We're moving from just working hard to working smart. So before we dive into any of the fancy techniques, we have to start with the foundation, and that is your mindset. Think of this as the strategy layer that makes all the other tips and tricks actually work. Because at the end of the day, this is not about working harder, it's about working smarter.
And that brings us to our first big idea, the Pareto principle. You've probably heard of it as the 80-20 rule. And it basically says that for most things, 80% of your results will come from just 20% of your efforts. Applied to studying, it means 80% of your exam score is probably going to come from just 20% of the material. So your first job, your most important job, is to be a detective. Find that crucial 20%. Look at old exams, talk to your professor, figure out the core concepts, and then laser focus your energy there.
Next up, let's talk about Parkinson's law. And this is something you have absolutely felt before. It's the idea that work expands to fill the time you give it. So if you block out 3 hours to read a chapter, your brain kind of gets lazy. And guess what? It takes you 3 hours. But what if you told yourself you only have 20 minutes? Suddenly, there's this urgency. That pressure tricks your brain into starting right away and focusing like crazy, basically crushing procrastination before it can even get its shoes on. So you've got the right mindset, you're ready to work smarter. Now, how do we create the perfect environment for your brain to actually do the learning? This part is all about getting into a state of deep, uninterrupted focus, what some people call the zone. And the state we're shooting for is called deep work. This is where the magic happens. This is where you make those real cognitive leaps. You know that feeling, right? That flow state where time just seems to melt away and you are completely locked in on what you're doing. This isn't just about putting your phone away. It's about getting your brain to operate at its absolute peak. But the biggest enemy of deep work is something called context switching. I'm talking about that quick check of your phone or a glance at your email. See, every time you do that, you create what neuroscientists call attention residue. It's like a part of your brain stays stuck on that last thing you looked at, and your performance on your main task can drop by as much as 27%. That one quick check is so much more costly than you think. So how do we fight this? You can't just flip a switch and command your brain to enter deep work. You have to ease into it. You need to signal to your brain that it's time to focus. And a little transition ritual is perfect for this. Something simple like putting on noise-canceling headphones, maybe with some instrumental music that's designed to help you focus, not distract you. That simple action tells your brain, okay, the outside world is shut out now, it's go time. Okay, so we've got our mindset right and we've created a focused environment. Now for the main event. What do you actually do in that environment? We need the right techniques. This is where we make the huge shift from being a passive sponge for information to being an active, engaged learner. A fantastic framework to get you started is the Pomodoro technique. It sounds fancy, but it is brutally simple. You work with intense focus for 25 minutes. No distractions. Then you take a 5-minute break. Get up, stretch, walk around. Then you repeat. This works so well because it actually aligns with your brain's natural energy cycles. It gives your prefrontal cortex, the part doing all the heavy lifting, a chance to recharge, which prevents burnout and keeps you sharp. Now, what you do during those 25-minute sprints is absolutely critical. You have to avoid the single biggest study trap there is, passive rereading. Highlighting stuff, reading it over and over. It feels productive, but it's mostly an illusion. The real gains, the real learning, comes from active recall. That's the act of forcing your brain to pull information out of itself without looking at the answer. That's what actually builds and strengthens neural pathways. So you're probably wondering, okay, so how do I practice active recall? Let me introduce you to one of the best ways, the blurting method. It's super simple. You read a section of your textbook or your notes, then you close the book, and on a totally blank piece of paper, you just blurt out everything you can possibly remember about it. Afterwards, open the book back up and, with a different colored pen, fill in all the stuff you missed. And here's the key. Those colored gaps, that's not failure. That's a treasure map showing you exactly where your weak spots are. Okay, so you've actively learned the material. That's a huge step. But how do you make sure that information gets transferred from your flimsy short-term memory into your solid, long-term memory, where it'll be ready for you on exam day? Let's talk about how to make it stick.
The key principle here is something called desirable difficulty. Think of it like going to the gym. If you lift a weight that's too light, you're not building any muscle. If you try to lift something way too heavy, you'll just get hurt. Learning works the same way. It happens in that sweet spot where the task is challenging enough to make you struggle a little bit, but not so hard that you get frustrated and give up. Techniques like active recall create this perfect level of difficulty, stretching your brain just enough to force it to get stronger.
Now, if you want the ultimate test of whether you truly understand something, you have to try the Feynman Technique. It's a simple 4-step process. First, pick a concept you're trying to learn. Second, try to explain it out loud in the simplest terms you can, as if you were teaching it to a little kid. No complicated jargon. Third, and this is the magic part, you will inevitably get stuck. You'll stumble over your words. That's the moment you've just found a gap in your own knowledge. And finally, step 4, you go back to your notes, fill that specific gap, and then you try explaining it again from the beginning. It really all boils down to that famous idea, often attributed to Einstein: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. The Feynman Technique forces you into this simple mode of explanation, and it makes it absolutely impossible to hide from the things you don't really, truly know. And here are 2 more quick hacks for that long-term memory. First is the spacing effect. The science is crystal clear on this. Do not cram. Spreading your study sessions out over several days or weeks is way more effective for getting stuff into your long-term memory. And for things like lists or processes, try the memory palace technique. It's where you mentally associate things you need to remember with specific locations in a place you know really well, like your house. You're basically hijacking your brain's powerful spatial memory. All right, we have covered a ton of ground: mindset, focus, techniques, and memory. But there is one final piece of this puzzle, and honestly, it's the easiest one to do, and yet it is the one that most of us, especially students, tend to ignore.
Here it is. The number 1 learning multiplier is sleep. That's right, sleep. You see, your brain doesn't actually store information while you're studying. The really crucial process of memory consolidation, of locking in everything you just learned, that happens primarily while you were sleeping. A little bit of light exercise can also give your memory a huge boost, by the way. So let's just be really clear about this. Pulling an all-nighter is not a badge of honor. It is a self-imposed cognitive handicap. You are actively preventing your brain from doing the one thing it needs to do to actually remember all the stuff you just spent all night studying. Sacrificing sleep is probably the single worst trade-off you can possibly make. So let's put it all together. Here is your deep work cheat sheet. First, use the 80-20 rule to find the most important material. Work in focused 25-minute bursts using the Pomodoro technique. Use active methods like blurting. Don't just reread. Test your understanding by trying to teach it to a child with the Feynman technique. Space out your learning over time, and please get enough sleep to lock it all in. Look, you don't have to do all of this at once. That would be overwhelming. Just pick one. Look at this list right now and just decide on the one thing you're going to try in your very next study session. That's how you